when life becomes so heavy that you wonder if heaven has gone silent. But this message arrives for the one who has been waiting, praying, and holding on through unseen battles. What feels delayed is not forgotten, and what feels broken is not beyond restoration. God is calling you to stay steady because something important is unfolding behind the scenes. This is not the moment to give up. This is the moment to listen carefully. There are struggles you have carried that no one knows about. You smiled in front of people while fighting battles inside that never reached your lips. You answered questions with "I'm fine," even when your heart was tired and your spirit felt stretched. You kept moving when you wanted to stop. You stayed silent because you believed no one would understand the weight you were carrying. But God says He has seen every hidden moment. Not one tear was invisible. Not one prayer disappeared. Not one painful night was ignored. There were nights when sleep would not come. Because your thoughts were louder than the silence around you, you replayed old memories, unanswered questions, disappointments, and fears about tomorrow. You wondered why things happened the way they did. You asked why certain doors closed. You questioned why people changed. You looked for answers and found only more waiting. Yet in every moment when you thought heaven was quiet, God was still watching, still present, still working where your eyes could not see. The world often notices victories but overlooks private battles. People celebrate results, but they rarely see the process. They see the smile but not the tears behind it. They see the strength but not the nights when you almost gave up. God sees both. He sees the version of you that kept going when nobody applauded. He sees the courage it took to stand again after disappointment. He sees the effort behind every small step you made when life felt heavy. You may think your struggle has been unnoticed because no one reached out at the right time. Maybe support never arrived the way you expected. Maybe you stood alone more times than you wanted. Maybe you became the strong one for everyone else while quietly carrying your own burden. God says your hidden battle was never hidden from Him. The silence around you did not mean abandonment. The waiting did not mean rejection. The struggle did not mean He had turned away. Sometimes the deepest battles are not around you but inside you. The fight against fear, the fight against doubt, the fight against hopeless thoughts that whisper nothing will change, the fight of believing again after disappointment, the fight of trusting after betrayal. These battles leave no visible scars, yet they can feel heavier than anything seen by the world. God says He knows every part of that fight. You have asked questions you never spoke aloud. You wondered if your prayers were enough. You questioned your strength. You questioned your future. There were moments when you felt rotten because the answer did not come quickly. But God says delay is not absence. Silence is not distance. Waiting is not proof that He has stopped moving. Think about how many times you were protected without knowing it. How many situations changed quietly. How many unseen moments carried hidden mercy. You may only remember the pain, but God remembers every step where grace held you together. Even when your faith felt small, He did not leave. Even when your words became few, He still listened. Even when your hope felt weak, His attention never moved away from you. The battle you never spoke about may have changed you. It may have made you quieter, more careful, more tired. But it also revealed strength you did not know you had. You survived days you thought would break you. You kept walking through seasons that felt impossible. You remained standing through storms that tried to take your peace. God says He has seen it all, the hidden tears, the silent prayers, the moments of faith. The unanswered questions, the private disappointments, and the strength you carried when nobody else noticed. He has been present in every unseen chapter, watching every step, holding every moment, listening to every whisper of your heart while you continued forward through the battle no one ever knew about, and while you were carrying those hidden battles, another question quietly stayed in your heart. Why is it taking so long? You looked at the promises you held onto and compared them with the reality in front of you. You expected movement but saw waiting. You expected answers but met silence. You expected change but found another day that looked exactly like the last one. God says hold on, because the delay you are fighting against may be serving a purpose you cannot yet understand. Human eyes often measure progress by speed. We believe that quick results mean blessing and slow seasons mean something is wrong. But God does not work according to panic, pressure, or human time. lines. What feels delayed to you may actually be preparation. What feels still may actually be movement beneath the surface. Seeds stay hidden before they grow. Foundations are built before the house appears. Preparation often happens where nobody can see it. You have been standing in a season where nothing seemed to make sense. Doors remained closed. Opportunities passed by. Plans changed without warning. You prayed for one outcome and life moved another direction. It felt confusing because you thought the answer would come differently. Yet God says some delays are not punishment, they are protection. There are things you wanted earlier that would have arrived before you were ready. There are places you wished to enter that would have broken you if you had gone too soon. Think about how many times disappointment later revealed hidden wisdom. At first it felt like loss. At first it looked like rejection. At first it seemed unfair. But time showed that certain closed doors were not there to hurt you. They were there to redirect you. The thing you called delay may have been divine timing quietly working in the background. There are moments when God allows waiting because something inside you must grow before something around you can change. Patience develops where answers are delayed. Strength rises where comfort disappears. Faith becomes real when certainty is absent. If everything arrived immediately, you would celebrate the gift but miss the transformation. You may not realize how much you have changed already. The person who entered this season is not the same person reading this message now. You have become stronger in ways you never planned. You have learned endurance. You have learned silence. You have learned how to keep moving even when emotions wanted you to stop. The delay shaped parts of you that instant success never could. God says, do not mistake waiting for emptiness. Just because nothing visible is happening does not mean nothing is happening at all. Roots grow in hidden places. Preparation happens in quiet places. Answers begin forming long before they appear. Heaven can be working while earth still looks unchanged. There were days when frustration almost convinced you to walk away. You thought about giving up on the dream, releasing the hope, lowering the expectation. You became tired of waiting for movement. But God says this is not the place to quit. If you leave too early, you may miss what the season was trying to build inside you. The delay also reveals what truly matters. It removes false expectations. It exposes weak foundations. It teaches you where your trust really stands. When everything moves slowly, you discover what remains when excitement fades. You discover whether hope can survive without immediate results. You may feel forgotten because your answer did not come on your schedule. You may feel overlooked because someone else received what you were praying for. Comparison tried to steal your peace. Watching others move forward made your waiting feel heavier, but God says your timing is not their timing. Their path is not your path. What belongs to you does not disappear because someone else received their blessing first. The waiting season has been painful, but it has not been empty. Every delay carried lessons. Every pause held purpose. Every unanswered moment was shaping something deeper than you realized. God says hold on a little longer because the story is still moving, even if your eyes cannot yet see the pages turning. Because behind this silence, an urgent shift has already begun to take place where heaven is arranging things beyond your understanding. Because while you have been standing in this season of waiting, something has been changing beyond what your eyes can measure. God says an urgent shift is happening, not in the places people can easily see, but in the unseen spaces where direction, timing, and purpose begin to move. You thought everything was standing still, yet heavy. N was never inactive. What looked like silence to you was not emptiness, it was preparation. You kept asking for visible signs because you wanted reassurance. You wanted proof that something was moving. You wanted one clear answer, one open door, one undeniable moment that would tell you to keep going. But God says many of his greatest works begin quietly. They start before the announcement. They begin before the evidence. They move before the world notices. There are things being rearranged that you do not yet understand. Certain connections are shifting. Certain paths are changing direction. Certain opportunities are moving closer while others are moving away. You may think you are losing something important, but God says not every exit is destruction. Sometimes movement begins with separation. Sometimes progress starts with release. You have noticed changes around you. People who once stayed became distant. Plans you trusted started falling apart. Places that felt permanent suddenly Enlil became uncertain. At first it frightened you because you thought stability was disappearing. But God says some foundations must shake before new ground is prepared. This shift is not always comfortable. Change rarely feels peaceful in the beginning. It often feels confusing because the old season has ended while the new one has not fully arrived. You stand in the middle, looking behind and looking ahead, unsure where you belong. Yet this middle place is not punishment, it is transition. You have been carrying expectations that no longer fit the direction ahead. Old fears, old disappointments, old labels, and old versions of yourself have tried to stay attached to you. But God says you cannot carry everything into the next chapter. Some things must stay behind because they were only meant for the season you survived, not the season you are entering. The shift is also happening inside you. You may not have noticed it at first. Your thinking has changed. Your priorities have changed. The things that once controlled you do not hold the same power anymore. You are beginning to see differently. You are beginning to value differently. You are becoming someone prepared for what once would have overwhelmed you. There were prayers you thought went unanswered. Yet God says some answers were delayed because the timing around them was still forming. Pieces were not in place. Paths were not ready. People were not prepared. What felt like inactivity was actually alignment. Do not be alarmed if life feels different now. Do not fear every change. Not every disruption is meant to harm you. Some disruptions are invitations to move. Some endings are opening space. Some delays are creating better timing. The shift may not look impressive at first, but movement does not need noise to be real. You may still wake up and see the same surroundings. Your circumstances may not change overnight. The problems may still appear familiar. But God says the unseen movement has already started. The answer is not as far away as you think. The door is not as closed as it appears. The story is not as finished as fear keeps telling you. What you call silence may actually be the sound of preparation. What you call delay may actually be alignment. What you call confusion may actually be transition. God says hold your position because the atmosphere around your life is changing. And the reason this matters is because you are closer to the turning point than you realize, even if everything around you still looks the same, because the final stretch has already begun, and this is not the moment to walk away. And that is why God says, this is not the moment to walk away. You have come too far, carried too much, and survived too many battles to stop now. The final stretch often feels the hardest because it arrives after long waiting, repeated disappointment, and silent struggles. By the time people reach this point, they are not always defeated by failure. Many are defeated by exhaustion. You have been strong for so long that tiredness started feeling normal. You kept pushing even when your heart was asking for rest. You kept believing even when doubt tried to become louder than faith. You kept showing up while carrying questions nobody knew existed. Now you stand at a place where part of you wants to continue, but another part whispers, maybe I should just let it go. God says do not make permanent decisions from temporary exhaustion. The enemy of your progress is not always opposition. Sometimes it is weariness. Weariness makes promises look impossible. It makes hope feel distant. It turns waiting into frustration and silence into fear. It tells you that because nothing happened yet, nothing ever will. But God says weariness is not truth. Think about everything you already survived. There were moments in the past when you believed you would not make it through. There were seasons that looked impossible. There were days filled with confusion, disappointment, loss, and uncertainty. Yet you are still here. You continued even when you had no clear map. You moved forward when your strength was limited. That was not weakness. That was perseverance. The final stretch often hides itself. It does not arrive with announcements. It rarely says, you are close. Instead, it tests patience one more time. It asks for faith one more time. It challenges endurance one more time. Many people quit because they mistake the final test for another endless delay. God says do not confuse pressure with failure. Pressure can mean movement, resistance can mean progress. The reason things feel intense may be because change is closer than it has ever been. You expected the breakthrough to feel exciting, but sometimes it feels heavy first. Sometimes it arrives after the hardest chapter. Sometimes the greatest temptation to quit appears right before direction changes. You have already invested too much to turn back now. Think about every prayer you prayed, every song you learned, every tear you cried in private, every sacrifice you made, every time you chose hope instead of surrender. None of it was meaningless. None of it was wasted. There are still promises you have not seen. There are still answers that have not arrived. There are still chapters that remain unwritten. If you stop now, you leave the story in the middle of the sentence. God says, keep holding your ground. Do not let disappointment rewrite what faith began. Do not allow fear to speak louder than purpose. Do not hand your future over to a moment of frustration. You are not standing at the beginning anymore. You are standing after survival, after growth, after preparation. The person who started this journey no longer exists because the process changed you. You may not feel ready for what is coming, but readiness is not always a feeling. Sometimes it is hidden inside the strength you built during the waiting. Sometimes it is found in the battles you thought were breaking you. The road behind you proves you can continue. Even now, when you feel uncertain, something inside you still refuses to fully let go. That small remaining hope is not there by accident. It is the reminder that the journey is still active. The reason you keep returning to prayer, returning to belief, returning to expectation is because part of your spirit already senses that this chapter is moving toward change. God says, stay in position a little longer. Hold on through this final stretch. Do not walk away while the door is beginning to move, because the next thing you must understand is that not everything from the old season is meant to travel with you into what comes next. And as you continue forward, God says there is something you must understand about this next season. Not everything can come with you. You have been praying for increase, asking for change, waiting for new doors, but at the same time trying to carry things that belong to an older chapter. God says some things are being removed, not because he wants to hurt you, but because they cannot go where you are going. This is the part many people struggle to accept. We ask for new beginnings, yet hold tightly to old attachments. We pray for growth, but resist change. We ask God to move, then become afraid when movement begins. But every new season asks a question. What are you willing to release in order to move forward? You have already seen signs of this happening. Certain relationships changed. Certain conversations became quiet. Certain places no longer felt the same. Things that once gave comfort started losing their hold. At first you thought something was wrong. You wondered if you were losing too much. But God says not every loss is a setback. Some losses are preparation. There are people who were meant for part of your journey, but not the entire road. Their purpose was connected to one chapter, not the whole story. Keeping them beyond their season creates confusion, delay, and unnecessary Right? God says, do not force what heaven is allowing to move away. You have also carried thoughts that cannot enter the next season. Old fears still speak to you. Old disappointments still try to define you. Memories of failure return and whisper that nothing will change. You remember the times things fell apart and expect the same ending again. But God says the next chapter cannot be built on yesterday's fear. Some habits must stay behind. Some beliefs about yourself must stay behind. Some versions of you must stay behind. You are not the same person who entered the storm. The process changed you. The waiting shaped you. The battles strengthened you. Yet part of you still speaks to yourself as if you are the person you used to be. God says stop carrying expired identities into a future that requires growth. There are dreams you had that will not happen exactly the way you imagined. This can be painful because people become attached not only to outcomes but also to expectations. Why? Pictured the path one way but life moved another direction. God says do not mistake a changed route for a cancelled promise. Sometimes he removes the plan because the purpose is bigger. Sometimes he closes the door because the destination changed. Sometimes he clears space because what is coming needs room. The removal process often feels uncomfortable. Empty spaces can look frightening. Silence can feel heavy. Separation can feel personal. But God says do not rush to fill every space that becomes empty. Some spaces are meant to remain open until the right thing arrives. You have spent too much time carrying burdens that were never meant to stay forever. Old guilt, old shame, old words spoken over your life. You replayed mistakes and allowed them to become chains. God says those chains cannot move into your next season. The future ahead requires lighter hands and a freer heart. You may still grieve what left. You may still question why certain things changed. That is human, but do not build your home inside what is ending. Honor the lesson, keep the wisdom, and continue walking. Because even now, while things are being removed, God is not leaving you empty. He is making room. Room for new strength, room for clearer direction, room for what aligns with the purpose ahead. What feels like separation today may become understanding tomorrow. What feels like loss now may later reveal protection. What feels like an ending may actually be preparation. God says trust the process of removal because the next season will require a different version of you, and as the old weight begins to fall away, a new message of strength is already being released over your life that will carry you into what comes next, and as the old weight begins to fall away, God says a new message of strength is being released over your life. Not the kind of strength the world talks about, where you pretend nothing hurts and carry everything alone. This is different. This is the strength that rises quietly after broken moments, the strength that keeps walking even when emotions are tired, the strength that remains when comfort disappears and certainty becomes difficult to find. You have spent so much time surviving that you almost forgot what hope feels like. Every challenge taught you to stay alert. Every disappointment made you more careful. Every unanswered prayer added another layer of caution around your heart. You learned how to protect yourself from pain, but somewhere in the process you also became afraid to expect good things again. God says fear has spoken long enough. Fear told you the waiting would never end. Fear told you nothing was changing. Fear told you the silence meant abandonment. Fear told you the future would repeat the pain of the past. But fear is not the author of your story. You have listened to voices inside your mind that became louder during lonely seasons. Thoughts arrived late at night. Questions appeared when nobody else was around. You wondered if you had enough faith. You wondered if you missed your moment. You questioned whether you were still capable of carrying what was ahead. God says those questions do not define your future. Strength is returning, even if you do not fully feel it yet. Sometimes strength comes before emotion catches up. Sometimes heaven restores what the heart still thinks is lost. You may still feel tired, but tired does not mean defeated. You may still feel uncertain, but uncertainty does not mean direction is gone. Look at everything that tried to stop you, the disappointments, the delays, the closed doors, the private tears, the moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing. Yet none of those things finished your story. You are still standing, you are still moving, you are still searching. That alone is proof that something greater kept you going when your own strength became small. God says stop speaking to yourself as if you are broken beyond repair. Stop measuring your future through old wounds. Stop deciding tomorrow based on yesterday's pain. The season ahead cannot be approached with the language of defeat. You have survived storms that once looked impossible. You carried burdens that should have taken your peace. You faced silence that tested every part of your faith. And even through all of that, something inside you remained alive. That remaining hope was not weakness, it was evidence. Evidence that God never released his hold on you. There will still be days when doubt returns. There will still be moments when fear knocks again. Strength does not mean those things disappear forever. It means they no longer control the direction of your steps. You are learning how to move while still healing. You are learning how to trust while still waiting. You are learning how to believe while answers remain unseen. That is growth. That is courage. That is the quiet strength heaven has been building all along. God says, lift your eyes. Again, the season of carrying everything alone is ending. The season of believing only in worst-case outcomes is ending. The season where fear spoke louder than hope is losing its power. You may not see the entire road ahead, but you do not need the whole map to take the next step. You only need enough faith to keep moving. Because this message of strength is not being released for no reason. It is preparing you for the final truth you must hear. After all the delays, battles, removals, and silent seasons, one thing still remains untouched. And that is the promise that has been standing over your life from the beginning, waiting for you to hold on one more time as the journey moves toward its final revelation. And after everything you have walked through, God says there is one truth that still remains. The promise still stands. The waiting could not erase it. The pain could not cancel it. The delays could not destroy it. The battles could not remove it. You may have questioned it, up to it, even stepped away from it in your thoughts, but God says what He spoke over your life has not disappeared. There were moments when you almost stopped believing, not because you wanted to lose faith, but because the journey became longer than expected. You thought the answer would come sooner. You thought the breakthrough would happen differently. You imagined a shorter road, an easier process, a clearer direction. Instead, you found hidden battles, long nights, unanswered questions, and seasons where silence seemed stronger than hope. Yet here you are, still reading, still searching, still holding on. That matters more than you realize. Because the fact that you are still here means the story is not over. The promise was never built on perfect circumstances. It was never dependent on your strength alone. It was never limited by the delays that frightened you. God says the promise survived every season you thought would destroy it. Think about everything that tried to convince you to quit, the disappointments that stole your excitement, the people who walked away, the doors that closed, the plans that changed, the prayers that seemed unanswered. Each one of those moments whispered the same message. It is finished, but God says it was never finished. It was forming. The promise often grows in hidden places. You expected visible progress, but heaven was working underground. You wanted immediate evidence, but preparation was happening where eyes could not reach. You thought nothing was moving because you could not see movement. God says unseen work is still work. There are blessings you have not met yet. There are answers already moving. There are chapters still waiting to open. The future is larger than the pain that tried to define you. Do not let temporary darkness become your permanent conclusion. You have carried enough fear. You have carried enough doubt. You have carried enough disappointment. Now carry expectancy on. Carry hope again. Carry the belief that what God began still has a future. You are not standing at the end of loss. You are standing at the edge of understanding. One day you will look back at this season and realize that what felt like delay was building strength. What felt like silence was creating depth. What felt like abandonment was actually protection. What felt like ending was preparation. God says hold on one more time. Hold on when the answer feels far. Hold on when emotions become heavy. Hold on when fear returns. Hold on when progress seems invisible. Do not release hope because the promise still breathes. Do not walk away because the road became difficult. Do not surrender because the night became long. The same God who carried you through hidden battles, delays, shifts, removals, and seasons of rebuilding has not changed now. He was there in the silence. He was there in the tears. He was there in the waiting. He was there when nobody else knew what you were carrying, and He is here now. The promise still stands over your life. The story still moves. The purpose still lives. The answer still has time to arrive. The future still holds pages you have not read. The door still has the power to open. The light still exists beyond the season you are in. God says keep holding on because what you survived was not the end of your journey. It was the road that prepared you for everything that is still coming. And even now, heaven continues moving with purpose over the life you thought had become still as a new chapter quietly begins to rise before you without noise, without announcement, but with meaning that will one day make every battle, every delay, every tear, and every moment of waiting finally make sense.